Hello, and welcome to Sandlando Soundwaves. I'm Derek Kindlesberger. Today, we'll be going over Day 48, which encompasses Genesis chapter 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." But he refused. "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. One day, he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. "Look," she said to them, "this Hebrew has been brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." She kept his cloak beside her until his master came home. When she told him his story, "That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me and made sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." When his master heard the story his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me," he burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success whatever he did. Now let's go over our 7 arrows. What does this passage say? What did this passage mean to its original audience? What does this passage tell us about God? What does this passage tell us about man? What does this passage demand of me? How does this passage change the way I relate to people? What does this passage prompt me to pray to God? Now let's open up our 7 Arrows book to page 64 and read the devotional. God changed Jacob's name to Israel, the name by which God's people would be known in the Old Testament, and continue to be faithful to the promises he made to Abraham by blessing Israel with 12 sons, who would become the head of the 12 tribes of Israel. The youngest son, Joseph, was the focus of attention through the latter chapters of the book of Genesis. God worked through him to continue the line through which he would establish his people and send the serpent crusher. Joseph's life was far from perfect. He was sold into slavery and falsely imprisoned in Egypt. In spite of this pain, the chapter concludes by showing that God was with Joseph and was using everything in his life, even these painful experiences, to position him to accomplish God's purposes. We too can trust in the fact that life in a fallen world will be broken and painful, but God is at work to orchestrate every detail of our lives in order to fulfill his good purposes in and through us. Thank you for listening. I hope you will join us tomorrow.